So can I have you sit?
Yep.
I'm going to do, this is a test run. We'll do
Hi everyone, Dave Anderson here, Helicool's Helipad.
right on.
Are you testing yet?
I am testing. That's going to help. And then I'm going to, can I have you move to the other seat just for a minute, just to see height, spacing, and all that good stuff? I know you're taller than me, but right on.
Brian, what's your channel name?
It is God and Country with Brian K. Hill. I think if you go to YouTube at
Does it say with Brian K. Hill?
Yep.
Okay, God and Country with Brian K. Hill. Guys,
Or it might say,
check out that channel. See, mine's recording already. So
oh wow, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So this is my intro to this interview. Check out his channel, God and Country with Brian K. Hill.
Right on. Right on. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, Brian. Brian and I have been friends from high school. He was much smaller then, very small for his age, and he got picked on. After informing his torturers that I would kick their ever-loving the next time they touched Brian, we became friends. He's also the person responsible for introducing me to the Lewis County Gospel Mission Board of Directors, for whom I have served for almost 11 years.
So, this is Dave Anderson, local legend, high school football star, helped Winlock win the championship back in '84, or was it '85?
Actually, I need to correct the record on that because I played as a junior, and I played the line. And as you know, I was one of the fastest kids in the school. I played track.
Track, oh yeah.
And I did not have very much fun playing the line. I wanted to run. So I didn't play my senior year. I really should have, but I didn't. It's neither here nor there. Water under the bridge. If I'm not having fun doing something, then I'm doing something wrong, or I should be doing something else.
Well, at least you were doing it for the right reasons. I only joined so that I could hopefully date cheerleaders. So that was I had an entirely
You're not the only one.
Yeah, I had a totally different reason for playing football. But I will say there was a lot of those young men in your class that were very dedicated to the sport. There were several of them that played hard, partied hard, went on to have some pretty exceptional lives. Now, I didn't see you for a few years after high school until you were working in, I believe it was the Rite Aid or ShopRite there at the mall when Lewis County used to have a mall.
It's so far back. That was Payless, not the shoe store, but Payless drugstore.
Yes. That was
a couple of years when I was going through college. Yeah.
Now, when did you enlist and get into the Army?
That would have been in '89. But you know what? Before we get into all of that, I for those watching, I want to make sure that if you're just fresh to the Army, or if you've been in the Army a while, there's something very important that you need to know. And there's three very, very dangerous things that you never want to hear. One of them is a lieutenant that says, "It's been my experience," a captain that says, "I've been thinking," and a warrant officer that says, "Watch this." So, that being said, it was November 17th, 1989 when I enlisted. Now, I had to go through basic training, and I went through as a PFC because I had college. As soon as I graduated boot camp, I was promoted automatically to an E5 because in order to go to flight school, you had to be an E5. So I went from E3 to E5 immediately. I got to sew on the rank, which immediately, about a week later, I had to take and unsew that off because I became a warrant officer candidate.
Wow.
So I was a sergeant I was paid as an E5 all the way through flight school. Back then, you had to graduate flight school, then you got your commission as a warrant officer, then they gave you your wings because they wanted to make sure that they had you by the short hairs so that you didn't just go through flight school, get your certification with your wings, and then go okay, goodbye, and then go do civilian stuff.
Now, those of you who don't know, a warrant officer is very specialized. They're the unicorn of the armed services. So maybe some of you watching this right now, maybe some of you have been 20 years in the military and have never seen a warrant officer. This is what one looks like.
A younger version.
Younger, yeah, they'll look like this, but maybe have black hair, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's questionable, especially in the pilots.
Yeah.
That's a
So Army version is much different warrant officer than any other. And I don't know how many part series you're going to make on this, because we could talk for hours. Because I knew Brian when were you, 8th grade or something like that is when we first met.
I was a sophomore when I came to the Big
Sophomore,
Ten.
okay.
Yeah. I looked like an 8th
He looked
grader.
like an 8th grader.
I was very small.
Very small. But yeah, so we've known each other a long time. So a year and a half basically through flight school.
How did you know flight school was for you? I mean, that was what drove you to that?
Well, the weird thing was I was talking to the neighbor who's basically kind of like my adopted mom, even though I didn't have any issues with my mom or dad. My dad wasn't around for quite a bit. He was in the Air Force. But just down the hill from where I live, the Hortons.
Oh.
And I talked to them, and they were like, Andy, because they called me Andy. It's my last name, Anderson. So they said, Andy, you ought to think about being an airline pilot. And I'm like, you know what? That's a really good idea. And hey, we're from a small town. Normally, folks in small towns, you don't think like that. And that's I think one of our biggest problems is you just don't think of what you could be. You're just small town. So what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to do what everybody else in a small town is doing, and that's what you do. So God bless her for making me think outside the box and think higher than what that I was normally thinking I was going to achieve. So that started it way back when. That's when I was going through school. In college, I was going for my aeronautical or aerospace engineering degree. Ran out of money, and my dad was, hey, I'm retiring, so you need to do something.
Figure that out.
So my brother-in-law, who was a warrant officer, but if you know the military, know the Army, he was a walking warrant. Now, he was a flying warrant, but then he got hurt, and he became a walking warrant, and he was in counterintelligence. Very smart guy, very smart cookie. He says, what do you think about flight school? And that initial conversation with Mrs. Horton and the conversation I had with him is, I was like, you know what, that sounds pretty good. What do you got to do? Well, they'll take you high school to flight school. Like, well, I have a college degree. I'm at least an associate by then. I didn't have my bachelor. And so I applied. The recruiter basically just kind of chuckled. He had never had a warrant officer come through. He's like, oh, yeah, take the ASVAB and then we'll talk about it, kid, whatever. And I smoked the ASVAB. I'd gotten like 99 or 98 or something on almost every section. I was taking speed reading, all that stuff in college. So he's like, oh, I'd never done a package before. This will be cool. So he started, and he was a great recruiter. I'm going to say one of the best, because he actually saw a challenge where some recruiters will be like kind of lazy and not. I'm sorry if you're a recruiter, and I don't mean everybody's like this, but he was exceptional because he had never had one before. And if you're a recruiter, you know that as soon as you put one through and they get accepted, now you have a billet that you have to fill that next year to have a warrant officer. So once you get one, the Army thinks that you're going to get one every year. And then maybe next year they'll say, okay, now you have to get two. Okay, so this was a big step. I went through all of that kind of stuff, took my fast test and all that, and of course passed all that, took my flight physical, passed all that. That kind of brought me to that point of going in, and that's why I kind of chose that path before I went to basic training. As most people do, they'll have that dream job or whatever they call it If you pass, but your basic training, then you go to AIT. Well, flight school was my AIT.
Now you flew what with helicopters or helicopter did you fly?
They started us off on Hueys. So I had about 60 hours in a Huey. So that was fun. That was that was my learning experience, learning how to hover. I was in a field, a gigantic field, and just gave me one set of controls at a time, and I was all over that field. I used up every bit of it. Everywhere. And then pretty soon I got the hover button, and all was well. Went through all the basics and passed all my check rides. Went into instrument training, passed all those check rides. And then back then it was you had a choice of aircraft. Which one did you want to go into? And at that time I was thinking, well, I'm just here to get some training so that I can get out on the civilian side, because I'm going to stay in the military all my life. What the heck? Get out on the civilian side. So I picked an aircraft that I thought would be commensurate with that. That would be the OH-58 Alpha Charlie back then. They don't even have those anymore. So I did that, and that was a good course to go to, because it was not an advanced aircraft, but I mean control touch. It was purely hydraulics. There was no flight control system that was helping you, and because it was not an advanced aircraft, they made it really hard in a lot of other kind of ways, like threat identification and all this sneaking around and snooping and pooping with the aircraft, and which helped me later on, because one of my first duty assignments was the Cav. So I had a Cobra. As two Cobras normally followed a scout aircraft, and I figured I was there like my 6-gun shooters in my pocket. I would tell them, hey, I got an enemy, and they would just mow it down. So they were like pulling out a gun and mowing stuff down. It was a lot of fun to be like in that kind of command. You're like an air mission commander for those 3 aircraft. You're telling them what to do. You're maintaining your navigation. You're doing all the things to keep them safe. They're doing things to keep you safe. And our motto was that scout aircraft was mark the target with a burning aircraft, because we were unarmed and unafraid. We were armed because we had the AH-1s behind us, but we were the first ones out in the front. Well, that's all we have time for today. For more of this interview, stay tuned for next time when we continue this interview, or you can go see Brian's channel. Remember the name, God and Country with Brian K. Hill. Check him out, subscribe to his channel. He is interviewing lots of military folks, a lot of folks that were in his National Guard unit. It's just a really cool kind of channel to tell stories and to not lose that heritage. Until next time, I'm Dave Anderson signing out. You guys be safe out there, and God bless.